In today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast, is Cade Cunningham officially a superstar? Nick Wright dropped his Club Superstar edition. Was Cade Cunningham in? Should he be in? We'll talk about it in today's episode, Locked On Pistons podcast. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I am your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free to available on all your podcast platforms. If you have already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Again, I want to thank you guys for being everyday listeners supporting the podcast. I appreciate all of you guys. Make sure you guys check out the description down below for the Substack where I have reviews and film breakdowns coming to you guys. Also, Playback Room where we'll watch some of the games in these upcoming NBA Finals. Sneak peek or a spoiler, I think OKC's going to stomp whoever comes out the East. Probably going to be the Pacers. I think OKC's going to win the championship, but join us over there if you haven't already. It's a lot of fun. We enjoy it. Today's episode is the jam-packed episode. I want to talk about Club Superstar. Nick Wright dropped his edition of Club Superstar, which I really enjoy, to be honest. And was Cade Cunningham in Club Superstar? We'll talk about that. Do Ausar and Jalen Duren fit? This is a topic that came up on the Game Theory podcast with Sam Vecini and Bryce Simon. I wanted to just talk about it myself. And then also, does Jake LaRavia sound like a good fit and a good signing for the Detroit Pistons? We'll talk about that as well in today's episode. But let's go ahead and get into Club Superstar. So, every single year, I'll go ahead and just give you guys a brief description of it. Every year, Nick Wright drops a Club Superstar picture, a little edition, whatever, where he puts 12. It's the top 12 NBA players go into the club. You have someone sitting in line, and you have some getting kicked out the club. In order to get into Club Superstar, one has to go. It's a one in, one out. One in, one out. The max you can have in there is 12 players. And heading into this, there was a lot of people wondering, is Cade going to be in it? Who's going to be in it? Et cetera, et cetera. I really like it. So I was really interested in seeing if Cade made it in. So I'm going to bring it up on the screen for those of you guys who are watching on YouTube. And we'll break it down for those of you guys who are watching or listening on the podcast. Here are the names that Nick Wright has in Club Superstar. We got Jokic and SGA, obviously. We have Giannis, Luka, and LeBron. That's 5. We got Jason Tatum still, which I'm not going to lie. I feel like if you're injured or out for an entire season kind of injured, I don't feel like you should be in the club anymore, but is what it is. It has Jason Tatum in there. That's 6. Got Anthony Edwards, Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry. That is 9. And then the 3 guys that made it in that I feel like there's, maybe 2 guys, I guess. Jalen Brunson's the other. That's 10. The 2 guys that were put in that I kind of, this is the one that I'm kind of going to argue, or I guess you can make an argument about, is Donovan Mitchell and Tyrese Halliburton. Those are the guys who made it into the Club Superstar. So Cade Cunningham did not make it in the Club Superstar. So now I ask the question, or actually before I ask the question, you can see who's in line to be like next up, who's waiting to get in. You got Wemby in line right here. Cade Cunningham's right behind Wemby though. You got Wemby and Cade waiting to get in as if like they're coming up, like they're this close to getting in. So now that brings up the question I want to ask, is Cade Cunningham a superstar? Well, you got to define what a superstar is. And defining what a superstar is has been, oddly, the biggest talking point of the last 2 weeks nationally, where you probably would rather the national talking point to be, how good is OKC? How are they winning these games? How good is Indiana? How are they winning these games? Instead, all we're getting is a bunch of superstar talk, what superstar actually means, why guys aren't actually superstars, why there's no superstars in the NBA Finals right now, and why it's only Steph and LeBron forever, like all this stupid whatever. But how I will define a superstar is I genuinely agree with Nick Wright's definition, which is the top 12 players in the NBA. I think that even that may be stretching it a bit, but we were at a point that a few years ago, I felt like that there was like 15 guys you can make it, 15, 17 guys you can make an argument that were superstar players. Now I feel like it's pretty fair to say 12 guys, if you're a top 12 guy, you're a superstar. I feel good about that. So the question is Cade Cunningham a top 12 player in the NBA? And we all know what Cade did this year. what he was able to do for the Pistons, cracking their win drought, ending that, getting them to the playoffs at the 14-win season. We all know how great Cade is. But is he a top 12 player yet? So I'm bringing the picture back up. I want to go through each guy. So here are the guys that I think you cannot make an argument. You just can't make an argument that Cade is better than. And I'm going to be objective, and I'm not going to be, I guess I'll scoot over this way so you guys can see me. These are the guys that I'm going to say you just can't make the argument that Cade's actually better. You have to put bias aside. So I don't think you can make an argument, obviously. Jokic, SGA, Giannis, Luka, LeBron, Steph, Tatum, that's 7. Probably can't make the case for Brunson now after what happened in the series, so that's 8. I low-key feel like you can make the argument for him over KD at this point in his career. You know what? I'll leave it at that. I think there's 8 players. I'll leave it at that. I think there's 8 players that are in the club that you just can't make the argument for Cade over them. These other guys, I'm not saying it would be a winning argument, but I feel like you could at least present one. But there's 8 guys I would say that you just can't make the argument for. It's not the case. So I'll make the argument for Cade versus these other 4 guys the way he should jump in. The other thing is, too, I probably would have had Wemby in over Donovan Mitchell. I don't think Cade has an argument over Wemby. Wemby's the best defensive player in the league, and I think he's like where he's at in best defensive player in the league. The gap is so large that him being a top 15-ish offensive player, but then having that big of a gap defensively, I don't think there's an argument for Cade over Wemby. However, I do think there's an argument for Cade over Donovan Mitchell. I think Cade's a better defender. I think he's a better playmaker. And I think Donovan Mitchell kind of got put into this club and kind of being considered this way simply because he was on a fantastic team. He was on a fantastic team, and someone has to get in when you win that many games and are the number 1 seed in the East. So I don't know if Donovan Mitchell is actually a better basketball player than Cade Cunningham. I think you can make the argument, again, Cade's a better defender. I think he's a better playmaker. I think he can lead a bad team or lead an average team. If he wasn't surrounded by as much talent as he was with Cleveland, could he do what, like if you put Donovan Mitchell on this Pistons team, do the Pistons have the same type of success? I'm not sure. I'm not sure they do because they fed a lot off of Cade's playmaking and his ability to be an impact defensive player. So I think you can make an argument for Cade over Donovan Mitchell. Could you make an argument for Cade over Anthony Edwards? It would be a hard one to make. You maybe could make one, but I think it would be a hard one. Cade's main selling point would be he's just a much better playmaker than Ant. I think that would be his main selling point. And he controls the game better. He doesn't get as flustered by these defenses as it seems Ant does at times. I think that would be his main argument. But Ant's a much better three-point shooter, much more athletic, and even at this point is a better finisher than Cade, even though Ant's not the greatest finisher, to be honest, if you look at his numbers. But I wouldn't make the argument for Cade over Ant at this point. I would say, okay, I'm fine with Ant being over him. So that's 9 guys. I'd make the argument for over Donovan Mitchell. I think you can make the argument for Cade over Hallie, but with Hallie making it to... Hallie's about to be in the NBA Finals, and it's like, can't really argue that. Like, what are you going to say back to that? This dude is having a legendary playoff run, and he's about to make the finals. Like, kind of got to just concede that one, right? So I won't make the argument over Tyrese. I think the 2 main guys that you'll try to make an argument over for Cade is Donovan Mitchell and KD. Problem is, I think Wemby would go in, and then you're really saying Cade is fighting for a final spot in the top 12. I think Cade is probably, as of right now, somewhere in between 10 to 15. I think he's a top 15 player in the NBA. That's where I have Cade right now, 15-ish. I think the lowest some guys could have him was maybe 18th. That's the lowest I think you could have him. I think the highest in which you could have him is maybe 10th. That's my opinion right now. But what can Cade do to make it to where he is definitely a superstar and he's a mainstay in the club? His finishing has to get much better. He's a bad finisher at this point. We've went through the numbers before. Not a very good finisher. He has to become a much better finisher, and his three-point shot has to become much more consistent. If those things happen, I think Cade will be in that superstar club for the next 10 years. That he is one of those things away from being a more consistent pull-up three-point shooter and a better finisher away from being a consistent superstar for the next 10 years. But he has to improve those things. There's still weaknesses that he has that make him just I would say, in my opinion, just a little bit below some of these guys that you would have in the top 12. And he maybe has an argument over like maybe two of the guys, but it really is an exclusive club, and it's an exclusive top 12. Like, it's not, and not anybody should be top 12. There's a lot of really great players in the NBA. So Cade needs to get better if he wants to be considered a superstar. I do agree that he should be right in line. He should be like the next guy up. He's right there, but he needs to improve in some areas. And obviously, if the Pistons win a playoff series next year, that would be, a huge argument for him becoming a superstar and actually being one. So let me know. Comment section down below or over on Twitter @KukaHill. I'll put the picture up on the screen one more time. Do you guys agree with Nick Wright's club superstar, and what do you disagree with? Even if it's not just Cade, do you think Cade should be in there? Again, I'll go through the quick 12 who are in there. You got Hallie, Brunson, SGA, Jokic, Giannis, Luka, LeBron, Steph, Donovan Mitchell, KD, Ant, and Jason Tatum. Are there any of those guys that you would put Cade in over? And is there any other disagreements you have with the top 12 players in the NBA? Let me know. Comment section down below or over on Twitter @KukaHill. When we come back, I want to discuss Ausar Thompson and Jalen Duren's fit on this team. Can the Pistons feel confident about their fit together on the court moving forward? We'll break that down coming up. NBA fans, you know what time it is. Playoff season means big performances and even bigger rewards. DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh, You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order of $20 or more and use the code Wingstop50 at checkout and the combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid to from noon to midnight, the day after the game. Terms apply. So here's the play. Sign up for Dash Pass and unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. When any player scores 50 plus in a playoff game, Dash Pass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tender combo, that is a mouthful, from Wingstop, both figuratively and literally, from Wingstop the next day with a $20 plus order and code Wingstop50. That's Dash Pass, your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply with DoorDash. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. I want to thank you guys for being everyday listeners. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. We are almost there to 11,000 subscribers. We are so close. If you have not already, you want to support this podcast, please go over there and hit that subscribe button. You also can get notified anytime we go live and record the podcast live. We did that 2 episodes ago, so stay tuned over there. Also, check out the description down below for the SUBSTACK and the playback, and please leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. I really would appreciate it. All right, so this topic comes about because I was listening to Game Theory's podcast episode, hosted by Sam Vecini, who we've had on the podcast, and Bryce Simon, who obviously is the host of the Pistons Pulse podcast, friend of the podcast, has been on very many times. Hosted by them, they go through and they preview all the teams' upcoming off seasons, and obviously they did a Piston one. So I was listening to it last night, and it's definitely you guys should go check it out. I'll link it down below for you guys to go check it out. Sam and Bryce, obviously good listens. Go check it out. I'll support them. But there was one thing they said. There was one thing they were talking about that I pretty heavily disagree with, and I thought it was a nice talking point, so I wanted to comment on it. And it was basically the fit around Ausar Thompson and Jalen Duren. And that Sam's not a huge believer, or we don't even have to use the actual names. We don't have to, Sam or whatever. Just overall, the lack of belief of whether Ausar and Jalen Duren can actually fit on the floor. Do you trade Jalen Duren to go get a stretch 5, which is one of the takes that Sam had? Do you trade Ausar Thompson to go get a big fish and have that player play with Jalen Duren? What do you like? Because you just don't have much faith in them fitting together on the floor. And I tweeted this out, but the struggles of an Ausar Jalen Duren pairing on the floor makes sense theoretically. Like, if you walk it through in your head, it makes sense in your head. Before you actually see anything, before you dive into any data, whatever, blah, 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 in your head, it makes sense. Two guys that can't shoot, how can you space the floor out with two guys that can't shoot? How is that going to work, right? Like, that's the whole thought process behind it. How can you space the half-court offense out if you have two guys that can't shoot? That's the whole premise behind it. And in most situations, I'd say, that's probably a fair premise to start on. Like, that's probably a fair takeaway to have. However, I disagree with that pretty heavily. And I think I feel like if anything was answered this year, and you got a lot of answers this year from the Pistons on Cade, a few of the young players, the team moving forward, like, you got a ton of answers. But one of the very top answers you got, and this was a question we talked about before in the offseason that needed to be answered. If there was a question of Jalen Duren and Ausar Thompson fitting together, that 100% got answered. That question was answered unequivocally. The answer is yes, they can play together. And not only can they play together, they thrive together. And if you go into the numbers, all of them back up that. We'll get into it. You'll see how crazy the numbers are. But Jalen Duren and Ausar Thompson fitting together is probably the least of my concerns because I think they just do. And we'll explain why they do, but I just want to bring the numbers up first to back up my argument. I want to make sure I have data to back this up. So during the regular season, Jalen Duren and Ausar Thompson played 946 minutes together. They had a net rating of 4.5 plus 4.52. They were outscoring opponents per 100 possessions according to PBP stats by 4.52 points per possession. Or not per possession, net rating per 100 possessions. They had an offensive rating during the regular season of 118.28. That would rank as the third best offense in basketball this past year. They had a defensive rating of 113.7, which would be the 8th best defense in basketball this past year. That's with those two guys on the floor. You would have a top 8 offense and a top 8 defense. Something only few teams were able to say this year when those two guys were on the floor together and you were pummeling teams. That's the duo in the regular season. If you go to the duo in the playoffs, we talked about this. I went into a deep breakdown with film and everything in the SUBSTACK. You guys should go check it out in Jalen Duren's season or playoff player review. You guys want further breakdown with film and everything? Again, go check that out. But in the playoffs, those two played 110 minutes together in the playoffs. They dominated the Knicks in their minutes. They outscored the Knicks. Their net rating was a plus 7.1 per 100 possessions. They were dominating the Knicks in their minutes. Those guys were not the problem. Those guys work. Those guys play what they were working. The Pistons were winning their minutes. That was in the playoffs. And what makes it even more appalling, their numbers being so appalling, is that this duo is the only duo with Jalen Duren that had a positive net rating. Yes, that includes with Cade. That includes with whoever else you want to put out there. Jalen Duren and Ausar Thompson duo is the only positive net rating duo in the playoffs Duren had. So there is a legit argument that you could make. And by the way, it wasn't to that extreme. There were a couple other ones that were positive with Duren. But during the regular season, that data tracked. When those two guys were on the floor, Duren was at his best. When Ausar was off the floor, things crashed. So there's actually an argument, I would say, that this duo fits together, and without them being on the floor together, it actually falls apart. I would make the argument when you don't play with these two, the team falls apart. That would be my argument, is that it's not about whether these two fit together. They do. It's about, can this team survive when these two are not on the floor together? That's the question. And can Jalen Duren, is Jalen Duren able to have the same impact if he's not on the floor with Ausar Thompson? Because a lot of the numbers suggest that as soon as Ausar comes off the floor, the defense with Jalen Duren falls off the face of the earth. So my takeaway would be that this pairing 100% works and fits together. But then there's some more stats I want to bring up as well that back this up. Forget just 2-man lineups. Let's look at the 5-man lineups. The 5-man lineup of Cade Cunningham, Ausar Thompson, Tim Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris, and Jalen Duren played 491 minutes this year during the regular season. They dominated teams by 5.6 points per 100 possessions. They had an offensive rating of 118.0, again, which would be third best in the entire NBA, and a defensive rating that actually leaped from the duo with Duren and Ausar from 8th. They would go up to around the 6th best defense in the NBA. That's in the regular season. They pummeled teams in their starters' minutes. The starters dominated, and again, that starting lineup featured Duren and Ausar. They dominated their minutes. Now, let's go to the playoffs, which it gets even better for them. That same five-man lineup, and you guys will remember, the playoffs were just a few weeks ago. You guys remember what I was saying. I was begging for JB to just play this starting lineup way more. Cut the minutes of the rotation guys, cut the minutes of the backups, and just ride your starters a little bit longer. Because this starting lineup obliterated the Knicks starting lineup. In their minutes in the playoffs, that five-man lineup that featured Ausar and Jalen Duren, they won their minutes by 12.7 points per 100 possessions. They had a defensive rating, listen to this, they had a defensive rating of 99.3. Less than 100, they had a defensive rating of 99.3 with that starting lineup on the floor. This is 2025 we're talking about. This isn't 2005. This is 2025. That lineup was obliterating the New York Knicks in their minutes. They dominated the Knicks starters, just like they dominated during the regular season. So I would push back. If anyone has questions about whether Jalen Duren and Ausar Thompson can play together, I would heavily push back with all of these numbers that suggest that not only can they fit together, the team falls off without them. You actually want them on the. They not only can they flourish together on the floor. Now, I'll bring up the argument why that is the case and why the argument against them fitting. So the reason why they do fit is because they're both excellent passers, and Ausar Thompson is an all-world defender. That is why they work together. Ausar just warps your defense. We now have 2 seasons of evidence that simply putting him on the floor takes your defense from one of the worst in the NBA to a top 5 defense. It's honestly crazy. We have 2 years of this, and this is his first 2 years in the league. One of them coming off blood clots. It's honestly insane. That's one. 2, Duren is an incredible interior passer and an incredible passer out of the short roll. And Ausar is a really good passer as well. They're both good processors within the half court. So when you have 2 really good processors, 2 really good playmakers and passers that can read defenses and make the right read quickly, you can still take advantage of advantages created by Cade, advantages created by others, and create open shots when you have multiple playmakers within your half-court offense. That's why they work. And then obviously it works because they're all athletic. Him and Duren, they get stops and they love to run. They both love to run and finish in transition. That's the other thing too. That's why they work together. I will say the one thing that someone would probably push back against and say, okay, well, how much of that is the half-court offense? If you just looked at the half-court offensive stats, is it just as good? And no, that is true. The half-court offense, if you only looked at half-court offense and remove transition offense, remove defense, if you just looked at the half-court offense, no, the half-court offense wasn't that great. However, I would argue, my argument would be that was less about Ausar and Jalen Duren not being spacers, and that was more about Cade. That was more about Cade not having another guy who could create any offense, and Cade being the only guy who was a self-creator within the half-court offense. I think that's what that was more about. They didn't really have anyone else on the team. Tobias started to warm up a little bit towards the end of the year, I'm not going to lie. But throughout the year, for the majority of the year, they didn't really have anybody that could punish mismatches outside of Cade. They didn't have any guys that could dominate in isolation when you get a switch, a bad matchup. They didn't have another guy that if Cade kicks it out and they make the right rotations that can then go create off the bounce and create the right decision for another player. That's what I think is more of the lacking part of their half-court offense. Now, does Ausar and Jalen Duren am I going to sit here and lie to you guys and say it doesn't get clunky at times? Yeah, it can get clunky at times for sure. You have to have your spacing to a T. And we broke that down in the film breakdowns during the playoffs. Games 4, 5, and 6, I thought their spacing was incredible. Or not incredible, but way more crisp with those two. And that's why you saw both of them play a lot better within the half-court offense. But overall, my point is that does it require a little bit more creativity? Sure. Does that mean just because you have to be more creative, does that mean it doesn't work? No. All the numbers say that it does work. They flourish together. And I think if you're worried about the half-court offense, that's more about needing another guy within the half-court that can create. That's what that's more about. And if you want to be completely honest, I mean, we can be completely honest here. They need another creator, and also Cade probably does need to become just a little bit more efficient. Like, that is true as well. Like, if Cade was a better finisher, we probably are looking at the half-court numbers a little bit better. Now, Cade's great. We just talked about Cade's like a top 15 player. Like, you guys know I love Cade. But if we're going to be honest and be objective, like, yeah, that hurts the half-court offense as well, is that Cade's not the most efficient guy yet. He's improving each year efficiency, but he still can improve as a finisher at the rim, still can improve in his consistency from three. So I really don't think there's any real data that supports the idea that Duren and Ausar can't play together or they're not a good fit. I don't know if there's any data that really supports that argument. So just want to come on here and give my thoughts on that because it's something that's moving around the community I saw. So I want to give my thoughts on it. What do you guys think? Can Ausar and Jalen Duren play together? Do you guys disagree with these data points? Is there something I didn't bring up that I should have considered in talking about this duo? Let me know. Comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kukio. When we come back, a quick segment on Jake LaRavia. Is there mutual interest in him and the Detroit Pistons linking up this offseason? We'll talk about that coming up. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Check out the description down below for the SUBSTACK and the playback. Appreciate all of you guys' support. Thank you guys for being everyday listeners. You guys are the best. But let's go. Right before I start recording the podcast, actually, we got this. Right before I clicked record, a friend of the podcast, we've had him on the podcast twice now to talk about the draft. We might have him back on this year, or this offseason. Ben Pfeiffer of Basketball Insiders News. He also writes at Swish Theory. Good follow on Twitter as well. He was able to interview Jake LaRavia, who is a former player of the Kings, heading into free agency. And he was able to interview him, talk about his game, etc., etc. If you don't know, if you're sitting here asking me, who the hell is Jake LaRavia? I won't give you too much slack for it because it's not like he's some star or anything. He definitely is a role player guy. I'm not going to sit here and lie to anybody. He's not someone I would expect like the casual viewer to know who Jake LaRavia is. He was a player. He played for Memphis throughout his career for his first 3 years, and then came and played for Sacramento the final 19 games of his season this year. Interesting player. He is on the short list of players I have the Pistons being interested in this offseason. He's a big forward, strong guy. Plays the wing position, move up to the 4. But anyways, Ben Pfeiffer was able to interview him, and in his interview, he said that he is interested in coming back to the Kings, wanting to re-sign with the Kings, but also he has his eyes set on a few teams, including the Detroit Pistons in free agency. Would he be a good fit? Again, I had him already on the short list of guys I think the Pistons should be interested in upgrading from Simone Fontecchio. So hearing that it sounds like he has mutual interest in the Detroit Pistons, it's interesting to hear. So if you don't know who Jake LaRavia is, I'll break down just a brief. We're not going to go into a full crazy breakdown with him, but I'll give you guys a quick breakdown of him as a player. This past year, he averaged 6.9 points a game, 3.9 rebounds. He's a role player. This is not a superstar. This is a role player guy in your rotation. Averaged 6.9 points a game. He shot 47% from the field this year, 42% from deep on low volume, but 42% from deep, 2.2 attempts a game. Shot 51% on twos. Averaged 3.9 rebounds, 2.4 assists, etc. Again, this is a role player guy. Don't think that he's like some superstar. But I am intrigued by him. Every time I'd watched the Memphis Grizzlies over the last few years, I always came away feeling like, okay, this guy, like, he's not a star, but he seems like he plays the right way. Seems like he's a smart player. And just like a guy that I always felt like, okay, that looks like a fine role player. Like he's going to have a career. He was the 19th pick in the 2022 draft. So again, this is a role player type of dude. But let's dive into his numbers a little further. He was an incredible finisher at the rim this year. for Sacramento. He was in the 99th percentile this year. 82% at the rim. 82%. Pretty good. He's gotten better each year of his career. And this is a guy who went from 47%, 49%, 65%, 82% at the rim. He's gotten better each year as a three-point shooter. He's gotten better each year as a defensive player. This year, he's in the 92nd percentile on all threes, 42% obviously from beyond the arc. I think he's a fine defender too. I like Jake LaRavia. I think he would be cheap. I think he would be an upgrade over the Simone Fontecchio we just watched this past year. Again, he has some size. He plays with some attitude, some strength to him. And I think I think he's still getting better too. Like, I don't think he's getting better to the point where I expect him to be a starter, but I think he's getting better each year to a point where he's becoming just a better and better and better role player, to where he's going to be a solid 7th, 8th, 9th guy on a team. So I would be interested in Jake LaRavia. I'm happy to hear that he has mutual interest. I hope the Pistons also have some interest in him. And if they don't go and get like this big star power forward, which it doesn't sound like they are, and they're trying to get someone for cheap, I think Jake LaRavia would be a fine signing. I don't think he would be better, like, as of right now. I don't think as of right now he's better than Simone we saw 2 years ago for those 19 games, but the Simone we watched last year, I think he's easily better than him by far. I would much rather have Jake LaRavia easily over the Simone we watched this past year. And I think LaRavia would have given the Pistons much, much better minutes. I think he probably would have even cracked the rotation in the playoffs for him. Because they needed somebody, especially when Tobias got into foul trouble. I think they would have been fine bringing LaRavia out. They had completely lost confidence in Tech by the time the playoffs came around. Tobias went to foul trouble, and they didn't even consider bringing Tech in. So I think it's interesting. I don't think he's going to be like the number one person on the board. But if you strike out on like on some big contract guys or a star or whatever it is, the Pistons' number one option is Jake LaRavia. I think you get him for cheap, around $6 million. That's why I don't think he's going to get no crazy deal. If you could get him for cheap, I would very much like Jake LaRavia on the team. But let me know, comment section down below or over on Twitter at KukaHill. How do you guys feel about Jake LaRavia? If the Pistons signed him, would you be happy about it? Let me know, comment section down below or over on Twitter at KukaHill. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. And until next time, peace out, everybody.